Please, right now, join me to welcome Professor Olabode Omojola as he presents the keynote. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. So I must start by thanking the Chancellor, Dr. Olukoya, for his great support for this symposium and for all his good deeds in support of music education, not just at Mountaintop University, but across the nation. Thank you, sir. I'm also thankful to the Vice Chancellor, Professor Elijah Ayolabi, to the Dean of Humanities, Management, and Social Sciences, Professor Babatunde Oni, and the Head of the Department of Music, Dr. Bayo Oyemi, for your efforts and contributions toward making this symposium possible. And how can I forget the energetic Dr. Oladele Ayorinde? Yeah. The convener of the symposium and his entire team, including the technical crew, working so hard to make this event a great success. It is also an honor to share the stage once again with Professor Kofi Agawu, who continues to inspire us. This lecture was inspired by a striking irony that I observed on Nigerian social media. While the country's cultural and artistic productions often serve as unifying symbols and a medium for pleasant conversations across ethnic divide, developments in the political sphere often reveal how divided the nation is. Well, I know that the comparison between musical and political narratives could be seen to be a mismatch, given that musical experience is predisposed towards harmonious interaction, one that, at least momentarily, brings diverse communities together, notwithstanding political differences. However, while happy moments of musical experience may be transient, a more enduring impact lies in the emergence of musical experience of what I would like to refer to as a pan-Nigerian musical culture, as represented, for example, by highlife music and Afrobeats. Although these may have ethnic or regional affiliations, they are iconic of a united country in ways that are at odds with the tensions that mark the political space. These conflicting signals serve as a background for my discussion today, for which I propose the following questions. What can we learn from the discursive discrepancies between the Nigerian musical public and the Nigerian political space from the perspective of nationhood? How does music critique and articulate the essence of the post-colonial entity called Nigeria, or propose what it should be? Given that nationhood refers to a political entity, and that political structures are products of social systems and cultural practice, in what ways could musical narratives metaphorize nationhood? Of relevance to my discussion are the concepts of conviviality and nationhood. I will also weigh in briefly on the imperatives of what I would like to characterize as the Africanist homological hermeneutics with regard to musical narratives. Conviviality has been defined as, and I quote, cohabitation with difference. And that's a statement by James Faria. It's a description that is particularly apt in a multi-ethnic nation like Nigeria. Various other scholars have emphasized the ethical and value-oriented qualities of convivial relationship. Catherine Walsh, for example, used terms like, and I quote, harmony, respect, dignity, and continual relation. And Francis Nyamjo uses words like, and I quote, togetherness, interpretation, interpenetration, interdependence, and intersubjectivity. All this as a model of African political agency. It is clear from this definition that colonialism was not interested in forging a harmonious convivial nationhood in Africa. It was motivated by a colonialist instrumental rationality, forged primarily by the desire to forcibly steal and exploit Africa's economic resources. Nationhood, as it obtains in Nigeria and indeed in different parts of Africa, was forged and continues to exist within the center-periphery framework of imperialism. The inherent inequality of this model of nationhood has also attracted the attention of many scholars. For example, Askill criticizes the Eurocentric idea of nationhood in its elite-centeredness and its top-down imperialist system that tease at cross purposes with the interests of the people. What we need is a grassroots nationalism that is shaped by the interests of the citizens. And I will return to that later. Music as a framework for thinking about Nigeria. Regarding the relationship between colonialism and music, Radano and Olaniyan have observed that, and I quote, decolonization of the ear made possible the decolonization of the territory, adding that a people or movement must be constituted musically before they can be constituted politically. Now, that's a huge one, isn't it? Because the statement practically invokes causality between society and music. They go further by drawing connections between the political economy of colonialism and music, observing that the electrical acoustics of sound capitalism made possible colonialism. In the same vein, Kofi Agawu has problematized the relationship between colonialism and tonal harmony in ways that help us see the political import of music in colonial transactions. Yet, all these are about connections between music and the colonial and post-colonial Africa. And as an example, the continuing impact of tonal harmony. I think I should go higher. The continuing impact of tonal harmony on Nigeria's political identity as a nation is demonstrated in the two national anthems that Nigeria has adopted since 1960.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. The tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigeria's own and proud to serve a sovereign motherland.
Okay, so I'm going to the next slide. But what about indigenous African societies? Coates and Kunuji remind us of the ontological significance of musical experience in Africa. For example, they discuss the status of indigenous music as a metaphor for conviviality and draw connections between what they call, and I quote, the metaphors of polyrhythm and the convivial concepts of Ubuntu and Gwenopo, both of which refer to being for others. We heard a lot of about Ubuntu since Monday. And as Agawu has observed, and I quote, African discourses about music generally stress holism over atomism integration over separation, and across the dimensions over a within a dimension tendency, end of quote. Coming home, what about making Zewe? He coined the word humaning, which links musical experience to ethical and convivial relationship in Africa. And regarding Yoruba music, what really comes to mind is the word Igbadun, which in the context of music making refers to aesthetic pleasure. For example, as generated through alujo, polyrhythmic dance drumming. And as speakers of that language will know, the word Igbadun also refers to a state of social medical health. This dual connotative significance of the word Igbadun provides a Yoruba illustration of the above observations. So, music, hegemony, and nationhood envisioning. It is not surprising that Nigerian musicians understand the connections between colonialism and music, and thus the political import of European music. The cultural tinkering of colonial musical genres by Nigerian composers represents the earliest forms of intentional creative action with political undertones. Consider, for example, Harcourt White's response to European hymnody, using his cultural agency to refashion the Methodist hymns that he was introduced to in Uzuakoli. My favorite example is the song titled Oye Mehi, a song about Christian repentance, which demonstrates how many earlier generations of African composers reformulated the hymnody and developed a personal interrogation of that inherited model. While the existence of the heptatonic scale in Igbo traditional music may have provided Harcourt White with a point of connection for engaging with European diatonic scale, he created his own dialect. Harcourt White's simulation of Igbo archetypal descent, homophonic parallelism, and asymmetric and flexible strophes defies the key premises of the European hymnody that inspired it. The so-called unorthodox elements in his music are neither arbitrary nor incidental. They are embedded sensitively, indexing an innovative hybrid musical episteme that serves the cultural needs of audiences in southeastern Nigeria. And yes, while the lyrics are about Christian repentance, the music itself, in flouting the rules of conventional Western hymnody, carries a political message. Fela Shwande's folk symphony. A different type of approach is offered in the music of a contemporary of Harcourt White, Fela Shwande. Also born in 1905, Shwande represented a different demographic of composers, those who received formal training in Western classical music. His folk symphony is particularly relevant to my discussion because it was specially commissioned by the Nigerian government to mark Nigeria's independence in October 1960. There was no symphony orchestra in Nigeria, a problem that is in itself politically significant, and the work had to be performed in Bournemouth, England. Showande's approach to nationalism in the composition is defined by the use of Nigerian melodies of the 1950s and 60s, integrated within a largely 19th century European romantic style symphonic language. In the fourth movement, for example, Nigerian high life songs are treated to improvisatory-like techniques that link high life music to jazz and are somehow reminiscent of the stylistic templates of African-American composers like William Grant Still and Florence Price. So I'm going to play two excerpts, one that shows, so I'm going to focus on the fourth movement. The first one is going to be the opening part of that movement. You're going to hear the principal theme, and then I'm going to play towards the end of the fourth movement. You're going to see some of the things that have happened to that theme. So that's the opening part. You can find this one. I was beginning to feel I was in my study at home. You know, that was not what I wanted to do. Okay. So now, although the symphony features no vocal parts, that song is about Obaya, Oya, Obaya, ya. Makolo. Owa lọ́rùn ọ̀pẹ lérí yábọ́ nìyẹn. Okay, excellent. Adeyemi, you know, I'll use something for that. Okay. And I saw that some of the people were already dozing when that thing came out. I said, everybody, you know, digging in. Now, although the symphony features no vocal parts, knowledgeable listeners like Adeyemi Musaya will easily remember the lyrics of quoted material and likely process the extra musical message as part of the listening process. While there are structural consequences deriving from the incorporation of Nigerian musical material, the European heritage manages to affirm itself. Beyond the simulation of lyrics, political euphoria is accounted for in the often loud and boisterous orchestration of the high life section, marked by the prominence of brass instruments with a clear appeal to the sentiments of dance. The exuberance of the closing measure, though not uncommon in symphonic finales, helps to capture the celebration of political freedom in Nigeria. Shiwande's musical euphoria could be heard as a hopeful statement that the nation would do well as a post-colonial state, notwithstanding her colonial foundations. I should add that by the 1960s, Shiwande's hope had changed into frustration, which was why he emigrated to the United States, where he died in 1987. By the way, if anybody is interested in this work, all the 4 movements are analyzed in my Nigerian art music, so you can go there and read about it. Shiwande's symphony is part of I'm quoting myself now, an unfolding solution-finding process motivated by the challenge of coming to terms with the realities of colonialism by the Omojola, 2009. All said and done, both works are based on 2 crucial symbols of colonial power, the symphony and the hymnody, and they may therefore be seen to be ultimately deferential to an imperialist musical hegemony. But unlike the symphony, the hymnody has become a domesticated foreign musical genre that many of us sing and enjoy very well every day, despite the fact that it's European. So, musical proposals. Following independence, I'm going to look at the music of NTA now. A major burden on political leaders was the challenge of fostering national institutions empowered as unifying agents and bearers of the nation's core values and interests, following the examples set by the BBC, VOA, and RFI of those countries, that's the UK, the United States, and France. Music has played a key role in the desire to consolidate the significance of media institutions as symbol in a multi-ethnic post-colonial nation. This seems to be the objective for the theme music of the Nigerian television network. Many of you will remember this. In that short piece, the kakaki and the alligator are foregrounded within the overlapping relationships among the various instruments. For example, the alternation of the 2 categories helps to articulate the moment-to-moment process especially in the opening part. While the Kakaki's two-note punctuations provide stability, contrasting with the relative melodic fluidity of the alligator and the xylophone. The drum, as always, provides percussive rhythmic motion. And while all the instruments could be potentially sourced from a single region of the country, they could also be heard as regional representatives, the wind instruments for the north, the xylophone for the east and middle belt, the drums from every part of the country. I don't know whether this music was put together under the auspices of the NTA or if it was a performance that predated NTA. Nevertheless, it illustrates the type of complementarity that defines many indigenous music traditions. The proposition that we hear in this piece is different from those of Showande and Harcourt White. Different not just in the use of indigenous instrumentation, but also in the near equal positioning of participating instruments. Showande's use of high life in his symphony is telling us about how the high life itself became the first major cross-ethnic national style in Nigeria. The Nigerian high life, notwithstanding its national status, is also regionally marked. Compare, for example, the music of Balamila, northwest, Rex Lawson, south-south, Osita Osadebe, southeast, and Victor Olaya, southwest. Regionalism as a condition for Nigerian nationhood is a political thesis explored in a popular high life song of the 1960s titled Wazobia by Roy Chicago. The music advocates for a notion of Nigeria based on a regional tripod of the Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Hausa. This tripartite is represented by a newly coined linguistic hybrid, Wazobia, which joins together three words, each from one of the three ethnic groups, with each one meaning come. So let's hear the music.
Ẹ̀yin ará mi, mo tún ṣe bá ṣàkàndé. Ara ẹ gbọ́ o, ẹgbẹ́dẹ lẹ́nu mi. Ẹ̀yin ará mi, mo tún ṣe gbẹ́dẹ kàndé. Ara ẹ wá o, ẹgbẹ́dẹ lẹ́nu mi. Wazobia, wá lédè Yorùbá. Wazobia, só lédè Haúsá. Wazobia, bíá lédè Ìgbò. Soso Wazobia, wá lédè mẹ́ta.
Anyone who knows that music is an adult. If you don't know it, in the first verse of the song, the musician announces his newly coined word. Newly coined word praises himself as this, in the second verse and taunts his cross-ethnic linguistic proficiency. Brass solo, clave-bracketed tonal progression, and improvisation combine to articulate the song's high lifestyle. There's also a short section in which drum surrogacy is employed to express Roy Chicago's preference for indigenous languages over Turanci, which is the Hausa word for English. I believe that Roy Chicago's choice of three ethnic groups to represent the entire country should be understood in terms of its symbolism rather than literally. And in any case, it will be a logistical nightmare to mention all the over 200 ethnic groups of the country in a short musical composition. But his choice of only the three largest ethnic groups easily lends itself to the charge of marginalizing the minority ethnic groups in a country where the politics of ethnic identity is rife. So we're moving now gradually to Fela Kuti. I'm sure you knew that we have to talk about Fela today. The political significance of Fela's music is evident, not only in its message, but also in the narrative form of the music itself. The structure of his songs is often modeled on indigenous chain song form, a modular narrative approach that we often encounter in traditional music, traditional music. It is characterized by structural flexibility, collaboration, and even negotiation, all of which are indicative of the grassroots performance aesthetic. I should quickly add that the Africanist modular narratives, the type of which I'm discussing today, are neither antiform nor random. No, it is not like the music of Western composers like Karl Heinz Stockhausen, for example, in his Klavierstück, which is one of the pieces that has randomness as the structural format. The Nigerian modularity, as variously constituted, is a socially controlled musical form. While the specific content and order may change from performance to performance, audiences have a clear understanding of what to expect based on the context and the genre. And talking about Stockhausen, here reminds me of when I met him when I was a postdoc fellow at the University of Cologne in Germany. I was able to retrieve the picture that I took with him, and here it is. So that's him, and that's me. If you are wondering how I looked some 20 years ago, so he came to the university to conduct a workshop, and I asked him many interesting questions. As you can see, that was a total digression from this lecture. I just wanted you to know that I met him. So let's now look at a piece by Fela Kuti. As we all know, African performances are often tied to non-musical activities, and we've seen some wonderful discussions earlier in the week of the African performance aesthetic. There is a strong relationship between the social and the cultural action that motivated the music and the musical performance itself, all of which highlight the holistic nature of musical meaning in Africa. Released in 1986, Fela's Look and Laugh is an album that focuses on the Nigerian political situation of the 1980s, specifically the regimes of Olusegun Obasanjo, who ruled as military head from 1975 to 1979, and Shehu Shagari, the civilian president, from 1979 to 1983. Let's listen to the opening part of the music. In the song, Fela expresses his frustration with the situation in Nigeria and explains why he had momentarily been inactive in his crusade against bad leadership. The piece begins with an extended instrumental section that lasts for over 13 minutes, followed by a vocal section of about 12 minutes, and then a return to an abridged version of the opening instrumental section. I don't know whether you can see that outline clearly. So you see the first instrumental section that goes for about 12 minutes, and then the vocal section, and then the instrumental section. What is important is what you could refer to as the structural parity between the instrumental section and the vocal section. You can see that you have those narratives. That's where, in this instrumental section, that would be like improvisation. And then in the vocal section, that will be where Fela is telling his story. And then you have the interlude, the narrative, and so on and so forth. And each of those small units is also internally dynamic. I have all those things analyzed, but I don't want to, dwell too much time on that. But the important thing is that this is a modular form. It's an extensive form, and you have Fela telling stories, and you have instrumental interludes. So these are the key narrative elements of the music: structural parity between instrumental and vocal sections, alternation between narrative sequences and groove-based interludes, graded climaxes. Fela is good at using textual, timbral resources to build climaxes. So in the absence of tonality and so on and so forth, it deals with sound itself. We reduce the volume, increase the volume to give dramatic support to whatever he's talking about. And so there is one part of the music that I've given the name chromatic laughing motif. Chromatic laughing motif. It's a recurring weird sound material that combines laughter with a kind of chromatic passage. And he uses that continuously. Throughout the song, what you just heard is a recurring transitional material, which I have described as chromatic laughter motif. It is a derisive, tongue-in-cheek sound gesture that comprises laughter marked by an ascending chromatic pattern. It metaphorically captures the message of the song and is the basis for the title. It portrays Nigeria's political leadership of the 1980s as a huge joke and a laughingstock, a situation calling for immediate remediation. So, what I'll be reading now will be kind of conclusive statements. Clearly suggested in my title is how musical narrative translates as a discourse of nationhood. It is about the relationship between music and society. Central to the notion of structural homology in music is, as Brian Parkhurst puts it, the idea that musical works are guided by the logic of the object being the social world. End of quote. That Fela's music represents a potent envisioning of a convivial Nigeria is not in doubt. Most people are aware of that. What demands more explanation is how. As I have mentioned earlier, the use of an African modular form provides a crucial structural anchor for his critique of the state of the Nigerian nation. The intentionality of Kuti's message is enhanced by its narrative form. So I'm trying to say that the form of the music itself empowers the message. Okay. And it has to do with the interactive dynamics of that form. How it is grassroots oriented, how it brings people together, and how it is jointly created. So to explain this, let us briefly chart the typical compositional trajectory of Kuti's Afrobeat. The music comes from Fela, right? From the body and mind of an ideologue committed to reforming a nation. The music is typically curated in a space that he calls shrine, the shrine, right? A site of socio-political action rather than an ordinary concert arena. So songs like Look and Life, which become popular when recorded, originate in that shrine, thus existing as sonic memories and harbingers of political action. The narrative sequence of his music results from the collaborative action within the shrine as created by Fela, his band, and the audience, functioning as dedicated participants in a politically focused performance. Those who frequented the shrine or have come to know what it was all about cannot but understand the purpose of his music and the interactive dynamics that created it. It is the intimacy between Fela's songs and the socio-political action that generated them that distinguishes the signifying mode of his music from that of Fela Shwande. One is grounded in the immediacy of social action, while the other is conceived in terms of the aesthetic gratification of musical autonomy. The musical examples that I have discussed speak to Nigerian nationhood in different ways. The NTA theme song proposes complementarity as a model of relationship through minimalist sound material rooted in pre-colonial practice. There is nothing wrong with that model in terms of the principle that guides it, even if it is limited in scope and exclusive of the complex soundscape of a post-colonial Nigeria. Showande's folk symphony and Hakotwai's hymnody represent different types of tinkering with European forms. The motivations for both are, of course, different. One is of a religious nature, while the other is a secular instrumental form. Showande's approach is marked by an aspirationalism that positions Nigeria within a global power structure created and dominated by the Western world. And I have suggested earlier, Roy Chicago's Wazobia's proposal about cohabitation is impressive in its quest for a united country. The simple form of the music is, however, matched by the simplistic assumption that conviviality will be easy. The music does not tease the complex structural issues, not that he had to do that. He's just a high-life musician doing his own thing. It doesn't tease the structural issues that await the co-joining of ethnic groups. In other words, the pleasurable aesthetic of high life, although could be very enchanting, is short on addressing the pragmatic challenge of cohabitation. Fela Kuti's music, in its affection for intentional socio-political action and its strong interrogative power, affirms the key elements of indigenous Nigerian musical traditions in which music exists a priori as an agent of social, religious, and political action. I should, however, stress that Fela's approach should not be seen as the only or the ultimate musical representation or advocacy for a convivial Nigeria. Not everyone can be Fela, even when they try very hard. His music should be understood in terms of the principles it demonstrates, the vitality of its anti-colonial human agency, the import of its metaphorical model, and the Africanist aesthetics that ground it. It is about interrogating Western elements in ways that buttress Nigeria's indigenous musical aesthetic. It is about a grassroots musical experience. It's about facilitating a musical language with a cross-ethnic appeal. And it's about fairness, equity, and proficiency. It is also pertinent to note that Kuti's music, notwithstanding its strong connections to indigenous musical traditions, operates significantly beyond the musical world of pre-colonial Nigeria. Its orchestration, for example, is dominated by Western instruments. Fela does not embark on a direct retrieval of pre-colonial music. He creates music that is reflective of his own experience. His critique and resistance to imperialism are not grounded in a utopian, puristic philosophy. The innovative qualities of his music thus reminds us of a crucial fact of post-colonial life. Post-colonial subjects cannot escape the contradictions of their history. Nigeria, therefore, cannot shy away from the conflicting impulses of its colonial history, a fact that brings me to my concluding statement. Fela Kuti's Africa-grounded interculturality is conceptually similar to what Francis Nyambio characterizes as domesticated agency, which emphasizes, and I'm quoting him now, negotiation, concession, and conviviality over maximization of pursuits by individuals or particular groups in context of plurality and diversity, end of quote. I should add that domesticated agency is a two-sided phenomenon, and one, an antidote to the disorienting colonial model of nationhood on the one hand, and on the other, engaging with indigenous values and cultures in ways that are responsive to the existential reality of post-colonial Nigeria. The essence of Fela Kuti's music should therefore be understood in terms of a domesticated musical agency, homological of a convivial Nigeria that we desperately want. Thank you for listening.
Distinguished scholars, can we rise and give a warm round of applause to our keynote speaker, Professor Olabode Omojola. Thank you for that beautiful presentation. Nigeria as music, conviviality, metaphor, and discourses of post-colonial nationhood.